Good evening, fellow compatriots. I do know that it is usually very, very difficult for us as a country to pay attention to details, to also look at where the country is coming from. I know that it is like some kind of DNA in we the Africans to listen to emotions rather than paying attention to reason. Zambia is coming from a background of huge and unsustainable debt for that matter. Now you need to understand this point, very important. It's very difficult to talk about today and the future without talking about where this country has come from. I was a member of parliament in 2006 when President Levi Patrick Mwanawasa embarked on a program to build the capacity of Zambia to be able to take care of her obligations. And his first task was to lead Zambia to the hippie completion point. Under many difficulties, President Mwanawasa, whose government inherited empty coffers, Zambia came from the Chishimba regime of handouts. Pastors were lining up at State House to receive gifts, but the country was going in debt. It looked good at that time, pastors going to line up for big envelopes. I'm not talking about the flock, the pastors. President Chishimba introduced what was called the presidential slush fund. The presidency was reduced to like Father Christmas, for lack of a better word. That government never cared about where that money was coming from. It was borrowed funds. Mwanawasa took over office. There was a huge debt of tens of billions of dollars. Mwanawasa said, it's time now to take the country back to work. Remember, he resigned as vice president, citing corruption among gross state mismanagement. That's why he quit. But as fate would have it, he bounced back as president of Zambia. This time, of course, not bouncing back, he bounced back into politics as president of Zambia. So he understood the background of corruption under the Chishimba administration. And you recall that during the reign of Chishimba, there are so many things that this country saw. Building of schools around the country, roads and all that. It looks so good. But we ought to understand that corruption also got entrenched in our country. Where 20 kilometers must be done, they would do a kilometer. And also borrowed funds. Mwanawasa paid back all the debts. He had to build discipline. He had to build the economy so that the economy could pay back. It's like a business. When you take over a business, you don't get money from outside to borrow. You go to the bank to borrow in order to sustain your business activities. Failure will catch up with you. So instead, a good businessman would build the business and the business is able to take care of the obligations like salaries, paying electricity bills, water, among other bills. It must come from growth. So it will take understanding, not emotions, what it takes to build a business that can remain operating for many years to come, rather than going to the banks to borrow money. Mwanawasa cleared the debt. Zambia had zero debt under Mwanawasa's reign of about 7 years. In 2006, I was a PF MP, remember that. President Mwanawasa almost lost power because Zambians never understood what he was doing in the first 5 years. Mwanawasa handed back the country to Zambians. Every debt was repaid. The economy started breathing. And in year one, after winning the elections in 2006, Zambia, for the first time, had huge funds that the state could not spend. Instead, Manasseh was trying to ask Zambians, what can you use these funds that we built for, that we've built at the Ministry of Finance? I'm not talking about reserves, because reserves are a function of the central bank. Reserves is not the money which is at the Ministry of Finance waiting to be shared. It's the Bank of Zambia which builds reserves, the central bank in any country. Now, I've been doing my best to try and explain these simple economic terminologies so that all of us can understand and start explaining to our relatives, those who are not able to understand these complex economic theories. But very important. So, President Hakainde Hichilema, the UPND Alliance government, inherited a Zambia which was similar to what Manasseh inherited in 2001-02. Zambia was in huge debt. We are talking about a debt of more than $15 billion. That's the debt which was there. Zambia could not meet our obligations. Zambia became like a junk, a basket case. The moment the PF government took over power, under President Michael Chilukasad, the country went on borrowing. They found reserves from the RB government, the reserves which Manasseh built. Remember, even after RB took over, actually, there were huge reserves which Manasseh left. But we saw reserves also declining. But the good thing is that the Rupiah Band administration did not go to the excesses to the extent of destroying that base of reserves. So the PF government found reserves of more than $3 billion. Then they came in with a Kaponya mentality, Kaponyanomics. Kaponya mentality, street mentality. It's everything, we don't need reserves, everything wiped out. If you remember, if you're in business, the exchange rate was at 3.5 kwacha. It moved from 3 kwacha to 15 kwacha in the first year of the PF. Now, what I warned when I quit the PF in 2009 came to pass. I resigned as Member of Parliament, left the gratuities. I quit. And I warned that PF is not a solution to Zambia. PF should never have the chance to run the statecraft. This country will be grounded. It came to pass. I saw it, that there was no plan for the country. All meetings were about how the country was going to be looted. I didn't want to be part of such a group, even though PF was set from government. That's why I resigned. I knew them that these are Kaponyas. And by then, belonging to the PF, if you have a structured thinking and you want progress, you want order, it becomes difficult to flow. I was not stupid. It's not about money. That's why I quit. And I won, and it came to pass. So reserves were depleted. Then they went on borrowing the money. The Eurobond, you are aware of all that. They went and picked Professor Chirwa from UK to come and run the railway system, Zambia Railways. The plan was to invest the Eurobond. The first Eurobond was to be invested in the railway system. Somebody can live in Kitwe and work in Lusaka. The electric train, it was going to take 1 to 2 hours for somebody to move from Kitwe to Lusaka and also transport goods at a faster pace. Now what happened? The thieves in the government, those who are in the cabinet, ministers, overnight they formed the companies, transport companies, they brought in trucks, and they sabotaged that project. Why was it sabotaged? They wanted to be transporters overnight. So if that railway system worked, they were not going to have business. They sabotaged it. Professor Chirwa was even wrongly accused of having stolen the funds, and yet he did not. They put cadres in the board of Zambia Railways without any experience at all. Cadres. Coming from, for that matter, one region. We saw Zambia divided. We saw this country divided more than it has ever been before since independence under that regime of Kaponyas, with Kaponya mentality. So now, I want to examine with you what happened under that regime in terms of the first Eurobond. how that money ended up in private pockets. They were looking at infrastructure. If we do a forensic audit, of which I have urged President Hakainde Hichilema, Bezrat Hashem in Hebrew, with the help of God, President Hakainde Hichilema wins the elections this year, the first task would be, and you people who push for this agenda in the alliance, will be Kulula.com. Sweep, to drain the swamp. Every thief must pay back. Every thief will pay back. Because these people who are ministers, and this evidence is there, they formed the companies, they took over contracts everywhere, local authorities, even from central government. They are the ones who are doing roads. So, those billions of dollars that were borrowed ended up in the pockets of these people. Where a road was supposed to cost something like 200,000 kwacha per kilometer, they inflated contract prices. $2 million per kilometer. Let's not forget, fellow citizens, where this country is coming from. $2 million. So where the country was supposed to do 20 hospitals, they did 10 hospitals. If Zambia was going to do 100 airports, they did 15 airports. This was window dressing, trying to show that they are working. Meanwhile, more than half of the borrowed funds ended up in their pockets. They amassed wealth overnight. And it's the common man, ordinary citizens, that at the end of the day we are suffering. After that first Eurobond, they went again for the second one. Billions and the billions were borrowed. Wherever they smelled money, they went to borrow the money. The economy was not growing. In other words, the funds that were pushed into the economy did not come from economic activities. You need to understand this. Just like a business. You are running a farm. Unless the farm is able to produce and be able to sustain its operations, it's just a matter of time it will collapse. But if you're running a farm profitably, and whatever resources that are coming from the farm, you are reinvesting in the growth, the farm will expand. If you have one fish pond, you end up having 100 fish ponds. I'm a fish farmer. I started with a few fish ponds. Today I'm a commercial fish farmer. My aquaculture project in the northern province of Kasama is the biggest in Wapula, Northern and Muchinga combined. It's the biggest aquaculture project. Schools are going there taking tours on my farm. I've also added a cattle. I'm a cattle rancher. I'm expanding, I'm growing the farm. I have sheep, I have goats, and I'm going into also, setting up factories there now. I want to start producing my own feed at the farm. So that is growth. It's coming from what I'm generating from the farm. Then I'm expanding on the farm. That's how nations are run. The economy must be able to meet its own obligations. The economy must grow. There was no growth under the government of Chipante, under the government where Kaponyanomics were being applied. So this is a challenge which President Hakainde Hichilema faced in 2021. Zambia went, as I said, on rampage, borrowing wherever they could get the money. The country reached a stage where the country couldn't borrow from credible lenders. So in the end, Zambia started borrowing from individuals. These things are not fictitious. Go and check the official reports at the Ministry of Finance. Zambia borrowed from individuals. A country going to an individual to borrow $300 million. Right here in Zambia, in this country. And these are individuals who are also benefiting from government contracts. Now there are millions sitting in their accounts, millions of dollars. They raped this country. Now imagine some of these people that Zambia borrowed money from locally. They got contracts, inflated the prices, they amassed millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, which are sitting in their accounts locally in the country. Then Zambia is grounded, then the same government who gave them contracts went to borrow money from them. So you're also talking about a huge domestic debt. Zambia lost credibility. And no investor could invest in such a country, even if you're a local investor. How do you invest in a country which is regressing, which is going backwards? This is where this country was. If President Hakainde Hichilema wanted to look at the election cycle, that elections are coming in 2026, it It was going to be very easy. We would have simply also led the country on the path of just borrowing and then push money in the economy and let the people get excited about it. But the government embarked on, first and foremost, restructuring the debt. Some of the debts that were due before that government left power, they couldn't pay. That's why Zambia defaulted. That's the meaning of default. They couldn't pay. Bakaponya, they couldn't pay. These Kaponyas. Shirendala mancho bakongwere. Bafiro kulipira pantu ichalo, chajona ike, ichalo, tachakwetya maka, akuchilipira shirenkongole. Zambia no longer capacity to repay the debt. So President Hakainde Hichilema embarked on a complex process to negotiate. And remember, some of the debts they borrowed these people, Zambia was going to repay in 10 years. That after 10 years, that's when they would repay. So to them, these Kaponyas were borrowing with the elections in mind, that after 10 years, even if they leave the power, the burden would not be on them. This is what they did officially. You can read the documents by yourselves. I know I don't have a culture of reading, but if you read, you'll find these facts I'm talking about. So a responsible president that we have, he may not really be a kind of man who wants to talk much. By talking much, I mean to impress people through good speeches. But he's a deep thinker. President Hakainde Hichilema is a deep thinker. If you sit with him, he's a deep thinker. Very structured. These debts were renegotiated in terms of restructuring. Restructuring does not mean that Zambia has no obligations. Now remember, you talk about a country which has a huge debt, but at the same time, there are today's needs. The country has needs, but you must repay that money which those people borrowed. And they left the country in a huge debt, unsustainable debt, for that matter. So, the restructuring was meant to give the country the breathing space. It's because of restructuring, that's why, for the first time in the history of Zambia, 2.5 million Zambian children are in school for free. They are not paying anything. These same 2.5 million children are feeding from Monday to Friday, they have a meal in school. 2.5 million. It's because of this breathing space that 1.5 million Zambians are on the social cash transfer. Remember, the number was about 400,000, those who are on the social cash transfer. But the number has increased to 1.5 million. The amount of money they were getting under that government of Kaponyas was 90 kwacha. Under this government, it's 450 kwacha to 600 kwacha per month. That's about 2 bags of minimum. So in other words, 1.5 million Zambian families are receiving 2 bags of minimum per month, 1.5 million. Now, these gains that this country has made might look to be unnecessary, but fellow citizens, this sets the Zambia on the path of growth. The $1.3 billion Eurobond, $1.3 billion, it has been bought back. Now what is buying back? Remember, UPND didn't borrow that money. It was the PF. We're talking about PF debt and not the debt contracted during the UPND reign. I'll explain time allowing that and what it entails and how that has helped the country. So, buying back means instead of leaving that debt to be repaid until 2053, Zambia has put what other countries are saying a masterpiece, economic masterpiece. Zambia has used reserve to buy back that debt. So that Eurobond is no longer a burden to the country. Can you imagine that? No one is celebrating this. Even the people who borrowed that money, they are not celebrating this. This is huge news. And as a country, we must learn to celebrate, to acknowledge progress where progress is being made. Buying back that debt, which they borrowed, is one of the biggest achievements that this government has made in 4 years, 10 months. Let the people of Zambia reflect and let that parent who is not paying school fees, that parent whose children are being fed by the government from Monday to Friday, free meals, feeding program in schools, so that Zambian children can learn on a full stomach and focus on learning. You must also, as citizens, see what is happening. Some of the roads that were done, bridges, they are being washed away. Should works, but money was spent. If you look at the roads that are being done by this government, you will see that they are not just building these cheap kind of roads. If you have driven, if you're in Lusaka, you are going to the airport, this Great North Road, look at those roads which have been rebuilt. They dig, they go under. It's like what they do in Israel. You go and dig down, put stones there, put concrete, and then you put the bitumen on the surface. Strong roads. There's this reconstruction going on to put up proper roads and not to do infrastructures for the sake of misleading the people to show that something is being done. Because when we are building, let's not build for ourselves, let us build for those unborn children. So this election is about the good and the bad. Surviving on rumors as a country, reducing national debate to a chair, national debate to rumors, on who is a child of God, who is not a child of God. The Almighty God is not a Muslim, is not a Christian, God is not a Jew, he is God. We cannot thrive or run the campaign on the basis of rumors that no, others are not children of God. We're the children of God. If they are children of God and they fear God, when they are carrying big Bibles while looting the state coffers, why didn't they address all these issues when they had a chance? The difficulties that this country has faced, they are real. The cost of living is high. We understand all that. But they are the ones who drove us into this stage. And what we have seen over the past 4 years, 10 months, is to take the country out of that. So that if you are talking about reducing the cost of living in the country, it must come from growth from economic activities and not from borrowing. The other thing that you citizens are forgetting is that whereas we saw some of these cheap infrastructure projects being done, it's this government, at the end of the day, that has been repaying for that. Inflated contract prices. This government has been repaying. And the question is, who has built? The one who went and borrowed the money, and even stole part of that money, and put up something cheap, and somebody comes because you can't run away from the obligations, even if you are not the one who borrowed as a government, as a new government, you still go ahead and repay. So everyone, therefore, is part of nation building. There are more things that we are going to be speaking about sector by sector, so the country can see where this country is coming from, where we are, and where we ought to go. For the first time in the history of Zambia, each province is going to have an economic hub. And we are proposing the alliance, as you people, that there will be need to build these hubs at district level, one-stop hubs economic zones. So what it means is that if you are in northern province, you are in southern province, you are in eastern province, you are not going to depend on the Lusaka economy. Local economies have to be built because these will become like growth centers for growth. Each province having an international airport will open provinces to international markets. If you are growing avocados, like Kawamba, for instance, and Mansa Airport, which is being worked on now to be expanded to be an international airport, we want planes to land there in the Mansa and take those avocados outside the country, so money will be in the local economy of Luapura province. The same must apply to all the provinces. Let us go out there and inspire our people to work, create cooperatives, form companies, and with one-stop services hubs, those companies must be registered on all these platforms, and even with the digital government. Digital government will remove the sense of individuals from the system so that there can be equality. It's not about who you know. It will be about your ideas. Competitive bidding at district level. And we in the UPP are going to push the agenda of building city-states where every district to become a county. And we are going to push the agenda in the alliance that each district receives equal funding from central government. Now imagine if each district is receiving $1 billion or $1 billion, you get $1 billion in Mongo, $1 billion in Kawamba, $1 billion in Serenge. That money will have hit the local economy. So it will be up to the people in that economy to tender. And we also want to push a policy proposal that when it comes to the award of contracts, if it's in a given district, we don't want briefcase companies to move from Lusaka to go to those rural economies. Let the local contractors be given the contracts in that district. Unless there's no contractor who's going to deliver, that's when, of course, you can go outside and look for other contractors. So that we can retain the funds in these places where the people are. Even the CDF itself. Now we need to go beyond CDF. That's what we are talking about, money hitting the local economy. We need to go now also into massive housing infrastructure. 2 weeks ago, I was with a fellow Jew, a multi-billionaire. He flew into Zambia, chartered a plane, local, and he did a tour of Zambia. His net worthiness is $59 billion. Now he's looking at how he's going to invest part of those billions of dollars in Zambia. He said Zambia has become an example of how a country must be governed. We, the people of Zambia, are not seeing it. Outsiders who understand finance, economics, they are seeing the beauty of Zambia. Just last week, the Zambian currency was voted as the best performing currency in the world. Aren't you proud as a Zambian? You can Google, you can check. It was voted as the best currency in the world. The Zambian kwacha is beating the rand. This is something to be proud of. Now, what does this mean, even the stable exchange rate? If you think that because the exchange rate, is in favor of the kwacha is stronger, if you think that the prices of things will go down automatically, you are lying to yourself. It doesn't work out like that. Instead, you must invest in importing. Don't just import a car, a luxury car. Why are you buying a car? You are a civil servant. You are working for a private company. This culture, this mentality in Zambia, please, let's transform our thinking as a country. Don't buy a car. Buy a tractor in $5,000, which is 5,000, which is now less than 100,000 kwacha. You can buy a tractor, a small tractor. Let it come. Go to that small holding that you have. Start producing. Because when you bring a tractor, you are bringing a tractor cheaply because the kwacha is stronger. If you have 50,000 in your account, if that 50,000, I'm just giving an example, it amounted to $3,000, now it's $5,000 today because the kwacha has strengthened. Buy goods from outside, import machinery. Buy some equipment to make cooking oil from groundnuts. Buy a little machine for $2,000, $3,000. Start doing something about it. This is what will bring prices down. So what this government is doing to set a platform for Zambians to participate in the economy. President Hakainde Hichilema has also said that with the $12 billion which has been invited in the mining sector, there will be a biased, or shall I say, positive discrimination. What does this mean? Supplies of essential commodities will not come from outside. No company will come from abroad to come and supply to the mines. It must be Zambian companies. This policy must be celebrated. Only Zambian companies must supply to the mines. This will retain the money in the local economy. And that's why Zambians, let us now be more creative and begin to look at how we are going to tap into all these funds and be able to create jobs locally and also ensure that even the incomes of our people, families expand. This is how nations transform fellow citizens. The Chinese who dominate us today didn't build China from the place of comfort. They didn't build the China from the place of handouts. I know that some people are missing that culture of handouts, but it was handouts from borrowed funds. Giving minimum from borrowed funds, going around the country. No, let's set up let's set up farmer mills under ZNS so that we can reduce the price of milk. They are not addressing the actual key fundamentals of the economy. These were just vouchers, stealing from the people, at the same time pretending to address problems for the people, and yet not. So we can't go back to that kind of mentality. People can gather around all these rebranded kind of looters. But let us remember that when they had a chance, what did they do with that power? Zambia has built reserves. Reserves are not for eating. Reserves are for giving the confidence in the economy, supporting the kwacha. Reserves are also a buffer against external shocks. Zambia imports fuel from the Middle East. Right now, Israel is at war with Iran. This is affecting fuel flow everywhere, including America is affected. So can you imagine if those Caponias continued, what would have become of Zambia? Now we have a stinking government. They have built reserves. So no wonder we are still, there's a cushion. If you look at the price of fuel in other countries, it has gone beyond affordability, even South Africa. But Zambia has enough reserves. So government is cushioning against that. Medicines and all that. Reserves are for the things that we import. But remember that there's also a program to build the capacity of the nation to export more. So that Zambia can have trade surplus. In other words, I'm talking about balance of payment. Very important. So, fellow citizens, those of you can read, I've been putting so many posts on my page. They are meant for those who read. From Facebook informatics in the background, I can see. My page may not have hundreds of thousands of people, but there are people who are not even followers who read. They read to the end. The number of those who read articles to the end has increased from 450,000 to 750,000. Let me repeat that. The number of people who read my articles to the end has increased from 450,000 to 750,000. These are people who have a culture of reading. So when you read to the end, please try to spread the message. Let our families understand where Zambia is, that you cannot afford to go back to those days. Let us continue on this progress and unity. Remember, they divided this country, but at the same time, we see them campaigning using the same division. One of them was a former minister, was in this area. He's saying in this campaign, Ababantu bauku, tuba peshe, Abantu bakwisa. We are all Zambians. You can't run the campaign on the basis of tribe. We are all Zambians. Let us unite, therefore, behind the government of mature leaders. A leader, especially President Akandecham, who is looking at the future of those children who are not even yet born. Let us unite and demonstrate that we can work together. We are Zambians, and no Zambian child must be judged on the basis of the surname. We saw that many people under the regime of rebranded looters, people were laid off from government based on the surname. We saw that kind of culture. Now what they are saying is that let us build Zambia. One Zambia, one nation, one people. Let us rise above division. For now, let us celebrate the buyback of this Eurobond. It's good for Zambia. It's good for our country. It's good for future children. Thank you so much.